Hello, my name is Amber and welcome to my creative space. Today we're going to go over what I painted in October. So October was actually a pretty productive month painting wise, which is kind of odd because for the first week and a half of the month we were not at home. We were over caring for my mother-in-law, and so I did not bring paints. I was gonna say I didn't have access to paints. I could have brought stuff with me, but I chose not to. When I'm there, I typically spend time crocheting, not necessarily painting. So for the first week and a half, I was not at home. Something that I haven't done in a long time, I did bring my iPad and I went ahead and I did do some sketching and painting on my iPad. So that kept me in the flow, the creative flow of working with it. And then when I came home, there was a worship experience that I got to be involved in, and I did do some worship painting. So that hasn't happened in a long time, so that was really cool. I think that those things just sort of primed the pump in the creative juices, and so this month I've done several, definitely more than four. My goal was to do once a week, so at least four tiny paintings, and this week I've done quite a few more. So in reference, if it's the first time tuning into my painting videos, I'm doing the 100 tiny paintings in a year challenge. I don't think that I'll be finishing my 100 in a year, but it is getting me back in the habit of painting regularly, which I appreciate because that's really what this is all about, is just consistency and showing up and being open and being willing to be creative and just engaging in the process. And that's definitely what's happening. The cool thing is, I believe my first tiny painting was in March of 25. And so now here at the end of October, I've actually reached the halfway point. I got to my 50th tiny painting. So that's definitely a milestone and very cool. But like I said, I don't know. Let's see. Well, it's possible because that's 5 months to the next March and 50 paintings. So 10 paintings a month really isn't unreasonable. It's a little bit more than 2 times a week. So we'll see. Let's go over what I did in October. The first painting was on October the 13th, and it was number 41, and it was from the prompt with the word drink. And I thought of a geyser or the living waters or the springs of living waters that scripture often talks about. So that was my inspiration, and I think it turned out very expressive and fun. This was once again slow drying acrylics on watercolor paper. So that's what that was. My next 2 paintings were on October the 14th, and they were from the prompted word heavy. And I thought about heavy clouds that were heavy with water or threatening weather, etc. And this one was my first attempt, and I figured I was very disappointed with it. It did not turn out how I wanted it to. I was trying to paint clouds, and I don't think it was very successful. I think it's an interesting painting overall for if you want to just think abstract, but because I know the initial intent of the painting and I know it didn't live up to it, it's hard for me to get excited about it. And so I tried again, and this was my second attempt, which I think turned out better. So landscape with some clouds, probably in the dusk of the day, and they do look dark. I don't know if they necessarily look heavy, but I thought it was more successful than this one. So the next day I painted was the 18th for number 44, and the prompt was Starfish. So I took it a little tongue-in-cheek and thought about those little fishes in the bottom of the really deep parts of the ocean that have their own lures attached to their heads to bring in food. So this is my version of a starfish. The next time I painted was the 19th, and it was number 45, and I was painting off of well, we had seen a butterfly in our garden, and I was inspired by it, and so I found a picture of a butterfly, and so this was my attempt at that. This was the beginning of a recent, I don't know how to say it, reacquainting myself with masking fluid. So if you don't know what masking fluid is, it's this stuff. It's liquidy, and when it dries, it just creates a barrier for the paint against the paper. So it's kind of like if you put masking tape down, you'd have the same effect, but with masking fluid, you can put it in all sorts of formats and shapes. And my attempt on this one was using a palette knife to apply it. This one currently has paint on the tip, but I dipped my palette knife in and then put it where I wanted it to. So overall, I think this turned out nice. There was, with all paintings, there's always things I want to improve, but overall, I think it's a very recognizable butterfly. So the next one was on the 22nd with the prompt Firefly. And there's my version of a firefly. I've never actually seen them in person, so I had to look up a picture of them. And I think it's a beautiful painting. It's colorful. It's atmospheric. I enjoyed it. Once again, I was trying to use the masking fluid for where his light was. And I don't know how effective it is, but at least I gave it a go, right? The next time I painted was on the 26th, and I wanted to retry the a painting because I had my birthday and I got new paint supplies. So I got a set of Kuretake watercolors. There's lots of debate about if they're watercolor or gouache or what they are, but I wanted to experiment with it and see what I could do redoing a previous painting. I also rediscovered my watercolor pencils I've had stashed away that I don't really use very often. I got these for my birthday, and they're watercolor pens, and I got my very first water pen, which was really cool, and I've enjoyed playing around with that. So I redid my butterfly, and once again using masking fluid, and yes, it's a recognizable butterfly. And, you know, if you compare the two, there's definitely similarities and differences. Some of what I was going for was some color variation in each of the panels, so it's not just a solid orange, but it had more variation, so I think that was definitely accomplished. The trouble I ran into was going back and trying to touch up the panels after I applied the black, and then the black started bleeding. So I see a lot more shadow and dark in this than I actually wanted. But I think like the background is more expressive than this. This is more one-dimensional when you compare it to this. So I think it's pretty successful. I wouldn't mind trying the butterfly again and just trying to get those veins even smaller and more dainty. So maybe my method of doing this needs to be adjusted. I'm not sure. So the next time I painted was on the 27th. Wait, was that? So this was the 26th. The next time I painted was the 27th. And here we have with the prompting of the word Inferno. I don't know that it's very Inferno-ish, but it's definitely fire. And I once again was having fun playing around with new supplies and new equipment and so forth. And next time I painted was the 28th, and it was the prompting word of snowflakes. And this was one of those disappointed, kind of frustrated moments. I used masking fluid to mark out the snowflakes and then did the background and then rubbed off the masking fluid. And the contrast in the edges where the masking fluid was extremely vague and fuzzy, and it didn't have the high contrast that I wanted. And so then I started fiddling, and of course when you fiddle you can often make things worse rather than better. So there's layers of white paint marker on this, and then I went to the blue. Is just, I'm definitely not satisfied with this. It was definitely an experience in a painting, but I tried. So that was on the 28th. And because I was disappointed with that, I just continued playing that evening because I didn't want to end on a disappointment. And so this was me rediscovering these watercolor paints that I've had in my drawer from Let's Make Art. And they're just liquid. They are definitely dye based, and so they will dye your hands or anything else they get on. But I was enjoying blending colors and just seeing what happened. And then I ended the evening with this one, which I think I was happy with it. It made me happy compared to what I started with in the evening. So that's like one of my goals is if I'm painting and I get to a point where I'm just disappointed and frustrated, I'm just going to continue to paint, whether it's starting a new one or a different one until I find something I'm satisfied with, so that the end of the session isn't frustrating and sad. So this one, I really liked this particular line, so I wanted to do it larger and then just sort of filled around it and played around it. Wes says, oh, that reminds me of tie-dye. Yes, there's tie-dye-ish elements to it. I can definitely see, like, galaxies and stars in the pattern. And then it occurred to me that it might just be a better version of Inferno. It's definitely active and energetic. So, I'm much more satisfied with this one. This was definitely an abstractist play with it, whereas this one I was trying to do representing something specific. And oftentimes that kind of drawing and painting will frustrate me more because I have an idea of what I'm going for and I'm not getting there, whereas these are much easier to play and enjoy and just enjoy the process. So as I was alluding to, what are my goals for this next month for November? I would like to say a minimum of 4 paintings. I'd like to just stick to at least 4 paintings a month. But the idea that if I do 10 paintings a month, then I'll be on track for finishing is tempting. But I don't want to pressure myself and then be disappointed if I don't get that 10 and I am not doing it. Because like doing these paintings here, I think, what did I say? There's 9 maybe? Let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 9 paintings a month. That was just a random fluke. That has not been my habit. But I'm not surprised that it happened specifically because I got new art supplies, and that always inspires me and gets me excited. So I'm not surprised that in October I ended up painting more. I don't really have plans on getting any more art supplies right now. Something I did buy myself was this little gadget. It was supposed to help you apply masking fluid easier. So it has this opening and channel, if I can get the light to show, that you use this little knob to control the gap up here, and you can pick up masking fluid. And it cleans up really, really easy. I don't ruin my brushes by putting masking fluid on it. The palette knife actually worked okay. It was very easy to clean up. I didn't ruin anything using it. So I can definitely see myself experimenting more with masking fluid and seeing what I can do with it. I can see myself maybe trying a butterfly again. I'm not sure. But at this point, 4 a month is my goal. And if I do more than that, great. But I also have to remind myself that we're moving into the holiday season, and I'll have more family obligations and parties and things to attend to, so all evenings will not necessarily be left to my own leisure. So that's another reason to keep my goals on the lower side, just allowing myself I can still succeed at 4, whereas if I do more than that, I don't know, maybe. But I hope you've enjoyed this little walk through my month with me, and I pray that you also are finding ways to be creative and setting small, attainable goals that bring joy and allow yourself to engage in the creative process. So, until next time, feel free to like and subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!